One night, there was a man who received a death warrant from the Texas Department of Public Safety. The man was James, who was the marshal. James got an official letter stating that Steve Lucas had died after being in a coma for 10 years due to a shooting error made by James. The scene then moved to 10 years ago, where Steve, who was a ranger in Texas, was trying to catch criminals with James. Unluckily, at that time, James, who was about to shoot the criminal, made a mistake and Steve was shot. Since then, Steve has been in a coma for 10 years until he finally died. James, who got his friend's death warrant, then felt sad and guilty. But he still needed to continue his life, which had become a marshal in an area called Horse Cave. The next day, James was dressed in a neat uniform with glasses that made him even cooler. James left for work to the marshal's office in his area, which was a quiet area, especially Horse Cave. A few moments after he walked from his house, James arrived at the marshal's office. Besides James, there was a young man named Matt who served as a deputy. James and Matt were the ones who would handle crimes in the area before finally reporting a crime to the state police. That morning, James still looked sad over Steve's death. Matt, who saw the sadness on James' face, then asked about what made James sad. But James, in his cool style, did not answer Matt's question. Matt then said that he knew last night James got a letter that made him feel sad. In addition, Matt also said that James went to a bar last night where Katie, a beautiful woman, worked. James then told Matt that his friend died after 10 years in a coma. He also told that in Texas, when James became a ranger with Steve and then conducted an operation to catch a criminal. James tried to shoot the criminal, but unfortunately James' bullet missed the target. This made James accidentally shot Steve and put him into a coma. After Matt heard James' explanation, he realized that maybe this was the reason why James no longer held a gun. James then confirmed Matt's words were true, that since the incident 10 years ago, James didn't want to carry a gun while working. Moments after Matt and James were talking, they saw two big bikers ride past their office. Matt and James initially thought they were just passing by. Meanwhile, at a bar, there was a woman named Katie. She was the owner of the bar. There were also several customers at the bar, one of whom was a mayoral candidate who was talking with his team. But not long after, two bikers who passed by James' office came to the bar. One of them asked Katie for alcohol. Katie told him that the alcohol would be served at 5 p.m. But the man forced Katie to serve the alcohol by grabbing Katie's hand. This made Katie feel annoyed because the man was forcing her. Katie, who could no longer hold her temper, then beat the bald man who asked for the alcohol. Meanwhile, the other man just stood and watched the fight between Katie and the bald man. In the middle of their fight, James came to Katie's bar. James, who was suspicious of the two bikers from the start, then arrested the man. But James didn't arrest the other man because he didn't make a scene. James asked about Katie's condition, but Katie seemed fine. Then James took the man to his office. Before that, there was Matt, who went to a bank to see the situation at the bank. After that, he returned to his office and saw one of the biker men in the office. James, without further ado, asked Matt to take the man to the state office to report an act of violence. Matt then left in a police car. On the road to Horse Cave, there was a gang of bikers in a white van. The bikers were divided into sections. This seemed unusual, as there was a purpose they were hiding. A few moments later, when Matt called the state office, Matt lost his connection because it turned out that one of the biker gangs had cut off the phone line. He finally lost contact with the destination office. A few meters away, Matt saw a biker lying on the road. However, this was not an accident but a plan from the motorcycle gang to sabotage Matt's journey that brought the bald man. Matt didn't think that the man lying there was acting. Matt unfortunately got out of the car, and the lying man then threatened Matt. Matt, who was confused by the events he experienced, could only obey the orders of the biker gang members. After arrested Matt, the man then tracked the frequency where the police were patrolling. So, the biker gang planned to take out the other policemen. Not long after, they found a policeman on patrol and killed him. Then they headed to James' place in Horse Cave. James, who felt there was something strange about the day's events, then tried to check the situation around him. Soon James found a man pointing his gun at James. On the other hand, there was one man and one woman who broke into the bank. They then took all the customers and employees as hostages. The customers who saw them both carrying guns then panicked and ran inside the bank. Back to James, who could do nothing but stay silent at gunpoint, and then saw a man coming towards him. It was revealed that the man was the leader of the biker gang. His name was Diablo, who seemed fearless with James. Diablo had planned this action well in advance. Therefore, Diablo, who knew that James and Matt were caught, was very optimistic that Diablo would get a lot of money from the bank that day. Moreover, Diablo also knew that in a few moments an armored car filled with money would come to the bank and refill the safe. This made Diablo even more excited. Then Diablo ordered 2 of his men to open the contents of the safe and take all the money inside the safe. After Diablo's 2 men brought the money into the van, a few moments later someone shot at Diablo from a considerable distance. It turned out that the person who shot was an old man with a mustache. The impact of the shot was that Diablo's men were shocked and ran. They looked for their respective hiding places. Diablo, who initially took James hostage, then accidentally let James escape with Matt because Diablo was surprised by the shot. James, who saw that, then paralyzed one of Diablo's men. This gave Matt and James the opportunity to escape. They both then went and looked for a place to hide. James and Matt entered one of the shops. They monitored the incident outside from the store. Meanwhile, Diablo was annoyed because someone messed up his plan, which was the old man who was shooting from afar. An angry Diablo then took a woman from the car as a hostage. It was found out that the woman was the wife of the old man who shot them. Diablo threatened to shoot the woman so that the old man would unwillingly surrender himself so that Diablo wouldn't hurt his wife. Sadly, the cruel Diablo decided to shoot the 2 people to death. Matt and James, who saw that, felt they had to do something and sought help. James then provoked Diablo's men. He turned on the alarm in the store and made a bomb out of makeshift materials. So when Diablo's men checked the shop and opened the shop door, the bomb immediately exploded and killed Diablo's men. The incident gave James and Matt the chance to leave the place. They luckily found a device to communicate before they split up. James then told Matt to go to the highway and block the armored car that contained the money. Meanwhile, James remained at the location around Diablo. However, Katie, who was being held hostage along with the other people, said that James' actions were a form of his responsibility as a protector of society. But the mayoral candidate named Luke disagreed with Katie's words. Luke, who was worried that his prestige would be rivaled by James, was secretly planning to file a dismissal for James' current position. On the side of the highway, Matt was seen monitoring the situation there. James told Matt to stop the car with the money from entering the Horse Cave area. But apparently Matt saw that the car was heading to Horse Cave because it turned out that the police car on the road was one of Diablo's men disguised as police, while the real police had been killed by him. Matt, who saw that, felt that things would get even more difficult. He then contacted James again and said that the car that contained the money would soon be heading to the bank in Horse Cave. James, who heard that, then felt that if he couldn't stop the robbery, then things would get more complicated. Therefore, James decided to go home. He took the gun that he hadn't used in 10 years. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Diablo and his men named Pyro were positioned near the bank entrance. They seemed to know that the delivery of money by an armored car would soon arrive. A few minutes later, Diablo and Pyro managed to capture one of the officers. They'd also threatened that if the officer didn't obey their orders, then one of them would die. But the officer in the car was confused, so Diablo shot the officer's friend to death. The officer tried to call for help with a satellite phone. Unfortunately, Diablo's men destroyed the satellite phone antenna in the car. Then the officer had no choice but to lock himself in the car. Diablo, who saw this, then ordered his men to blow up the car door. Without taking long, Diablo's men managed to open the car door, which contained a lot of money. They then took several bags of money while laughing happily. However, it turned out that Diablo was not satisfied with just getting money, but he wanted to kill people who endangered him, including the citizens who were held hostage in the church. Diablo told Pyro to burn down the church. Thankfully, before they burned the church, James came and crashed the car right next to Diablo's car. James then immediately hid and watched from afar. Diablo didn't see James, so he tried to get James out. Diablo then brought Katie out of the church as bait so that James would come out of hiding. Meanwhile, Matt was monitoring them, but he didn't know that James had made a plan. Thus, Matt, who saw that Diablo was going to kill Katie, decided to go out and approach Diablo. James, who saw Matt and Katie being held as hostages, quickly shot one of Diablo's men to death. Diablo, who was still curious about James' whereabouts, then told his men to check a place at the corner of the alley. Instead of finding James, he found a car with a lot of bottles. The man then opened the car door and apparently made the car explode. This caused Diablo's men to die. Diablo looked upset and frustrated to see one by one his men died. Then Diablo told his men named Piero to hurry up and find James no matter what. When Diablo planned to catch James, James managed to catch Diablo's man, who was an ex-Marine. James then invited him to work together to fight Diablo. The man easily agreed to James' plan because he didn't like Diablo's cruel ways. Shortly after, Diablo and Piero attacked James' office. Then Diablo managed to shoot his men who were working with James to death on the spot. Inside the church, Katie saw that the situation was quite safe because there was only one guard, a woman disguised as a bank admin. Katie then decided to do something so that she could help James and Matt, as well as free the people in the church. Katie secretly approached the woman and beat her up. Luckily, Katie easily defeated the woman by shooting her. At the same time, a group of state police were seen on their way to the location because Matt had previously reported via Katie's father's satellite radio. However, at that moment, a fake policeman who was actually Diablo's subordinate came up to Diablo. He told Diablo to leave the location as soon as possible. James, who saw the fake policeman was talking to Diablo, then quietly shot him to death. James managed to make Diablo panicked all over again. Slowly but surely, James opened fire on Diablo's remaining men. In the midst of the chaos, Diablo still had time to move the money that was robbed to his motorcycle. Diablo did this because he didn't have the chance to bring all the money, so it was fine with Diablo to take a little. Unfortunately, Diablo's intention to escape quickly had to be hampered by his motorbike, which broke down. Diablo, who was panicked, then looked for a vehicle which he only found an old motorbike whose speed was not much. Meanwhile, James struggled to fill the bullets in his gun. But at the same time, Katie came carrying a horse and complete with a rifle. Katie then told James to chase Diablo, who was not too far away. James, who was annoyed, immediately spurred his horse and shot several times at the motorcycle that Diablo was riding. Moments later, Diablo fell and still wanted to escape. Luckily, he was already helpless and James approached him. James pointed a gun at Diablo, who looked helpless, and shot him. At the end of the story, the atmosphere of the horse cave area was calm. James, who then walked gallantly, became Katie's husband. James was even promoted to mayor with the trust of the citizens there.